All right, moving on with our water resources. Um, Another way to increase your water supply is actually by tapping the very deep aquifers. And these deep aquifers have really, really high quality water because they are actually, not as exposed to contamination. And so these aquifers actually hold enough water to support billions and billions of people for centuries if it's done in a sustainable way. But we actually consider these aquifers to be non-renewable because they can't be replenished on a human timescale. They're confined. Recharge takes a lot slower than an unconfined aquifer, and so as we use them, it's not being replenished within human lifetime. And little is known about what withdrawing water from these aquifers will actually do. We know that in withdrawing water, we can get land subsidence, but you know, we are unsure about these really, really deep ones that maybe there might be some greater implications. Another issue with tapping the deep aquifers is that these aquifers actually cross international borders. And so, like I've said before, these water wars can actually happen because what I do in my country can affect another country. And so there is this, these water rights that are being fought. Oh man, the words aren't coming. I'm so sorry. Anyway, and another thing is that we don't know how much it's going to cost to actually get down into these aquifers. So, there's a lot of questionable knowledge. We're not sure about the consequences of tapping into these deep aquifers. Another way to increase water supply are dams. And so I'm sure you guys have seen dams up in North Stamford. Behind the dam is usually some sort of reservoir. And so these dams are built across the river to control its flow. Like I said, it creates a reservoir, and the reservoir can capture and store surface runoff. And as we need to, we can actually release water from these reservoirs to control flooding downstream. So, and that's all well and good, but then if there is an issue with the dam, then the people who live downstream are actually, I guess, they are susceptible to issues with the dam. Dams are awesome because they can generate electricity, but as we'll see, there are issues with that as well because the water that falls down the dam can actually turn a turbine, generating electricity. And these dams supply fresh water for irrigation and drinking. Obviously, it needs to be treated before you drink it, but it does supply us with fresh water. And lots of recreational activities take place in reservoirs. People can go swimming, fishing, boating, depending on the size of the reservoir and the restrictions on it. Um, these dams are decreasing river flow downstream because obviously I am putting something in place. And so everything downstream is going to be less than it would be naturally. And so this obviously is going to disrupt the ecosystem downstream. Not only that, it is also decreasing sediment deposition downstream. So the sediment downstream of the dam, you have less of it than you normally would. And this can be an issue because there are actually some nutrient rich sediments that get transported downstream that is important for cropland, estuaries, all kind of ecosystems. And not only that, that sediment behind the dam can also increase methane emissions because there is this anoxic breaking down of organic material behind the dam as well. And so most rivers are running dry before reaching their outlet into larger water bodies. So, for example, a river that's being dammed may not flow end up flowing into Long Island Sound, let's say. And so that decreases the amount of fresh water that's going into these larger water bodies. And so with the sediment building up behind the dam, reservoirs are ending up filling up with silt, and you end up having to dredge them. And so the reservoirs end up inefficient and are useless after about 50 years. So right now in Connecticut, there's actually like a dam project of decreasing the dams. So deconstructing dams around the state. It's pretty interesting if you want to look that up. And so dams displace people in flooded areas. So obviously you have this reservoir, and all of that area that's flooded is all of that area that's flooded will displace the people that were there before. And not only that, those lands that are also flooded could have been productive as well. Another issue that's happening is that it can actually disrupt migration of some fish. So, for example, salmon go upstream to their birth stream to spawn, and so it's blocking their passage. So, one way around this is they call it a fish ladder, and so it looks something like this. So, pretty much the fish can come um, over this series of locks to try and get them upstream and around the dam so they can continue spawning upstream. But it is affecting their reproduction rates. And so here's a nice broad overview of dams, right? Good things, bad things. So the good on the left and the bad on the right, the pros and cons. And, there's lots of risks and benefits to weigh when thinking about constructing a dam.